Hello, Michael.
Hey, JuanMa, how's things?
How are you doing?
I'm good, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, me too. Here,
Awesome.
ready for the Frontity talk.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Mhm. Okay, so today we are going to talk about some features of Frontity. In my case, I'm going to talk about processors, that it's a handy way of parsing the HTML, selecting specific items, and then return a custom HTML or custom output that you want based on whatever you want to do. So we're going
Cool,
to review that.
cool. And I am going to demonstrate a solution that we came up with for a question that came up in our forums. Somebody wanted to show a contact form in the footer of every page of their Frontity site. And we're going to show the solution we came up with. It's a useful paradigm that you can use to put any persistent content that you want to show in your footer or anywhere else in your site. But yeah, well, I'll demonstrate that.
Yeah, that's frequently asked question in the community. So yeah,
Yeah,
good that you're going to explain this. Great. So do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
I don't mind. I'm ready to go.
Okay, then you can go.
Okay,
Mhm.
let me share my screen. Okay, so this is the question we had in our forum some time ago. Yeah, a couple of months ago, back in May. They wanted to put have a contact form in the footer of every page of their site. So now Frontity, there's already a contact form 7 package for Frontity. So so it made sense to use contact form 7 in order to do this. So you will need to install contact form 7 in your site. Oops, mine's a little bit out of date, but never mind. Create a contact form. It's fairly straightforward to do. I suppose I should say that the contact form 7 package for Frontity is a little bit limited. You can only really use text fields and text areas. It won't handle drop downs or checkboxes at the moment. We're hoping to develop it. Well, we didn't, Frontity haven't developed it. It's actually developed by a third party. We're hoping that, you know, they'll take it further and add more functionality to it in the future. But at the moment, it's perfectly usable if all you need in your form is some text fields, you know, for name, email, and then a text area for the message, which is what most contact forms are. So it's perfectly usable from that point of view. So you need to create a form. Then the next thing you need to do is create a page in WordPress. And on that page, just put the content that you want to show in your footer, you know, your persistent content that you want on in every page in your website. So in this case, we just want a contact form in the website. So I'm taking the short code from the contact form and putting it in to the page. And that is the only content on this page because that's all we want to show in the footer. So that's our form created. Then you will need the contact form 7 package, which you can get by running, let me just expand that out a little bit. You can just run this command npm I Frontity contact form 7 in the root of your project. and that will install the package, and you will then see it will add the contact form 7 into your package.json, but you will need to manually add it to the list of packages in Frontity settings.js. But you just need to put that line in to Frontity settings.js. I think that's all documented here, what you need to do to install the contact form 7 package into Frontity. So we'll put this link in the description below this video, so you can find that easily. But all the installation instructions for getting set up with the contact form 7 plugin is here. Then once you've got that, probably the best thing to do then is just check that it's working, and you could do that by going to your site. So in my case, I'm using brochure.test. So this is the WordPress site. And then if I put in contact here, I can see that the contact form is working in WordPress. So we should have done that before we started working with Frontity. So we know that is working. And we can also test that in Frontity as well, because if we just type in contact here, we can see the contact form comes in because it's the only content on this contact page. And I should, I guess, point out that the permalink here is contact. So we go to our Frontity site, put in contact, and it should render whatever's on that page, which is just the contact form short code, which renders the contact form. So that's all working. But what we want to do is put it in our footer on each page. So as you can see, I've already got it all set up. I can navigate to different pages, and the contact form is on every page. So let's see how we did that. So we've got
this thing can be very handy for like the typical subscribe to the newsletter form that you can see in some footers.
Exactly. You could put any content down there. You know, you could put your mission statement, so long as on your page you just have the mission statement. Because now we're going to see how we actually pull this in. Okay, I don't need the package.json file. That's done for you automatically when you run npm install. Right, the first thing you need to do is kind of prefetch. We've already seen that the contact endpoint is working. So we need to kind of prefetch that. So we need a beforeSSR function, which you put in your themes index.js. So that's this one here. I'm working with Mars theme, by the way, here. So in your actions, add another action beforeSSR. It's an async function. You pass actions to it and use actions.source.fetch and the URL you want to fetch. That then adds this content to the state. So let me just go home here and refresh this. And then if I open up the console and go frontity.state.source and take a look, we'll see, even though I just refreshed the page on the home page, so we haven't visited the contact page yet, we should see under page, we already have the contact details already loaded with the content, which is your actual form. So that is being done, even though we haven't visited the contact page yet. That is already in this state by virtue of this beforeSSR function. So that's great. So even before you get started, as soon as you land on the home page or any landing page on your site, you've already got the contact form in your state. So then it's just a case of using it. So that's the magic sauce, really, is this beforeSSR function to prefetch that content, in our case, the contact form, into the state. And then it's just a case of creating a component that uses it, right? We want a footer component because we want everything to show up in a footer. Now, Mars theme doesn't have a footer by default. It has a header, but not a footer. But it's easy enough to create a footer component. And then what we're doing is getting the data from the state with these two lines. So here we're getting the data for the contact endpoint from state.source.data, and then getting state.source.page. We know it's a page already because we created it as a page here. So we can just use state.source.page and the ID that we've got from the data. And now in contact form, the variable contact form, we have, well, let me just open up that again. Yeah, so that first line, we're going to data and getting the information for the contact, which is that. And then we're using the ID to get state.source.page and the ID, which is 24. So what we've got in contact form is all of this information here, most of which we don't need. We only actually want the content, which we're then using there, contact form.content.rendered, which is our actual contact form, which is what our shortcode here on the page is producing. The other thing to point out here is that you need to pass libraries into this component so that you can use HTML to React. Because look what happens if I don't use HTML to React. So if I just delete that, let me just get that out the way. If I now save that.
You forgot
yeah,
an opening brace.
I deleted the opening, yeah. So let's do that. What it does, it literally renders the HTML. So obviously you don't want that. That's why we have to use HTML to React. So that it actually renders the form. Everything else here, like the contact form, is just styling. It's just a wrapper to provide styling. And once you've done that,
let me add, can you go to the previous?
Sure, no problem.
Let me add that by using this component, this HTML to React, you get two things. You can actually parse the HTML and convert it into the proper React code, so it's properly rendered. But also, by using this component, you will also make use of the processors. So there are already some processors added by default, for example, to handle iframes or to handle images, but you can create your own ones.
Precisely.
And that's exactly what I'm going to explain later.
This happened last time, didn't it?
Yes.
We independently picked topics that were linked, and we've done it again.
Yeah.
Again,
Well,
just by chance.
You know what they say, great minds think alike.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's...
They also say fools seldom differ.
I didn't know that one.
But yeah, we're not doing any of that there. We're just using HTML to React, just keeping it simple, just so that it renders the form and not the literal HTML. But yeah, there's a lot you can do with HTML to React, which you can learn more in our documentation. So this is a fairly simple component, and then all we need to do is import footer from footer, and then use it. And then our contact form shows up in the browser at the bottom of every page. And again, this footer container is just for styling purposes, because what I've done is I've made the footer, I've made the footer match up with a header, you know, in terms of color and width. So you can obviously style it however you like. And I'm illustrating this with a contact form because that was what the original request in our forum was for. But you can do this with any content. So the basic principle is create a page with just that content on that you want to show in the footer. Use beforeSSR to fetch that page or the content for that page, and then use it in a component and use the component wherever you want in your theme. And yeah, that's about all I've got to say on that. What I've done is I've created a repo for this, and you can see what I've done is I've commented. This is a basic Mars theme. The only changes to Mars theme is what I've just shown you, adding the beforeSSR, well, adding this, and I've put comments wherever there's a change to the standard Mars theme. I've commented each of my changes. Again, we create the footer component. There's not a lot to say here, apart from that. Just look at the code. And then here I've said, yeah, we import the footer component and add the footer component. So all my changes to Mars theme are commented, and the repo is here. So you can download it, play with it. And again, we'll put this link down below in the description.
Okay, great. So this strategy can be applied to whenever you want to use a specific set of elements from WordPress, that may be a contact form, or that may be some other shortcodes. So if you want to use them in your Frontity project, you can create a specific page containing those specific elements. And if, for example, you want to use those elements in the footer, in the header, that means in every page, you can do what you have done, like doing the prefetch in the beforeSSR. So then that information will be available directly in the Frontity state.
Precisely. And it doesn't need to be a short code either. I mean, I could take this short code out, say, let me just widen that up a bit. If I just delete, remove block, that's what I'm looking for, and just start say you want to put your mission statement in the in the footer of every page. You can say this is my, oops, let's spell mission right, mission statement. If I update that, I'm going to keep the same URL, even though it doesn't make sense because our code is all set up. So update that. And if I go here and refresh this page, it brings in that content instead at the bottom of every page. So any content you want, just put it in. I just happen to illustrate it with a contact form. And the beforeSSR is just fetching whatever that endpoint or that URL is rendering. So now it's rendering this.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Cool.
Over to you, JuanMa, unless you
Yes.
have anything else to add.
No, I think it's yeah, very interesting.
Cool, I'll stop sharing my screen then.
Okay, I'm going to share mine. I'm going to share my screen. So, okay, I'm going to talk about processors. So if we go to the docs, I'm sharing my screen, right?
You are, yep, I can see it.
Okay. So if we go to the docs under the HTML to React package, this is a package that comes installed by default in the official themes that we are offering, the Mars theme and the 22 theme. And in most of the themes, you will have them installed. But if you create your package from scratch, you will need to install this package if you want to render and parse the HTML. So by using this package, whenever you want to parse and render HTML that comes directly from WordPress, you will have the ability of using processors. So this is the package you have to install. You have to add it to the Frontity settings in the packages array. And then once it's added to your project, you will have it available from the libraries object that is passed to all the connected React components. If you use the connect higher order function, you will get via props some elements. Among them, you will have libraries, state, and some other ones.
Actions.
Actions, I think roots as well.
Mm.
So from libraries, you can get the HTML2 React component that can be used to render a specific content. For example, post content render. This is HTML that needs to be inserted in a React application in a special way. In a typical React application, you have the set dangerously HTML or something like that. I don't remember exactly the name, but there is a specific property because like injecting directly HTML can be dangerous because you can inject like dangerous code. So you need to specify this in a special way. So you can do that, or you can do this. You can use the HTML to React. By using this component, you also will be able of making use of processors. By default, Frontity offers some already made processors, for example, to handle images, to handle iframes, some other ones. But you can create your own processors. So a processor is a function that will be executed whenever you render any piece of HTML. And in this function, you will define like a pattern that you can use to detect specific blocks of HTML. So for example, you can detect divs or paragraphs, or you want to detect those elements who have a specific class, or or those two conditions at the same time. I want to detect a div with a specific class. So you can specify a pattern, and then for those blocks that have been detected using this pattern, you can return some other thing. You can return your custom HTML. This is an example of a processor to manage images. So for example, here this is the test function where you define the pattern you want to use to detect these pieces of HTML. So with this pattern, we are saying to the processor, okay, capture every component that is an image, every tag that is an image. And for those images tags, we will return some other thing. For example, we can return our custom React component. And that's where the magic happens, because we can detect specific pieces of HTML from our WordPress page and then transform those HTML pieces into React components. For example, here we have an image component already defined in some other folder in components image. And whenever we detect this, we can do some other things. We can extract information that may be relevant for us for our React component from the HTML. So for example, the data SRC or some other attributes in that HTML, and then we can return custom HTML component. So this is an example, and here I have a demo of a custom processor. And in the same way that Michael started his demo, I started this one because of some community question. And this guy wanted to do this. He wanted to detect these pieces of HTML from his WordPress installation, and instead of returning this, he wanted to return this HTML. So for doing this, a processor is like the right way of managing this. So for this specific use case, I mean, I want to detect this and I want to return this piece of HTML. We can create a processor like this one. So what are we doing here? We are defining a processor. A processor is an object with some specific properties. They are all defined here. The properties that we can use to define the processor. We don't need to define all of them. For example, only with these ones, we can create a processor. We assign a name to the processor. We assign a priority, so they are executed in order for the HTML.
So lower priority, so a lower number, it means higher priority, I think.
Let me check that. Priority. Yes, a lower priority, no, a lower number means a higher priority.
Yeah.
So for example, a processor with priority of 10 will be applied before a processor with a priority of 20. Yeah. So we assign a priority to our processor, and then we define a pattern. We define a test for our processor. In this case, it's a function that will receive the component and will receive a props. In this case, the props will be the attributes of the element detected. So component is equivalent to a tag, to a HTML tag. In this case, we want to detect all the block quotes tags. And also, we want to specify that we want to detect all those block quote tags that has a class name of WP block quote. I think this is assigned by Gutenberg. to the block quotes created by Gutenberg. So this is a good example of how to manage Gutenberg elements. We can create processors to detect all those elements created by Gutenberg, all those blocks, and then we can return our custom React components. So in this case, once we have detected the element, we apply the processor, the node is passed to this function. In this function, we do some stuff. For example, here we want to be able to let me, yes, here. Here we want to get this content and this content because we want to return this content in a different tag. So for doing that, we apply some logic. I mean, we can console log this node, have a look at what we are getting, and from there trying to figure out what is the information we want to use in our return component. So once we have this information, we can return a custom component, but also we can pass some props to this component. In this case, the quote component is prepared to receive a quote prop and an author prop. And the component is defined here. As you can see here, this is a React component that is ready to receive a quote prop and an author prop. So this React component is just returning some HTML displaying the content of these props. And here I'm applying some style, but here we could create style components and any other thing we want to use for this specific pattern of HTML. And once we have that, I mean, we define the processor that can be defined. For example, a good structure can be this one. We can have in our theme, we can have a folder called processors, and there we can define all the processors we want to define. And then in our index.js of our theme, whenever we define the settings of our package, in this case of our theme, we can add the processors we want to use in the HTML to React library. We can add them as an array. So we have some of them that are already available from the HTML to React package, for example, the image processor, the iframe processor, but then we have our custom one that is the quote processor, and we add the three of them here. Each one of them will have its own priority, so they will be executed accordingly to that priority defined. And that's all. Once we have that, every time we use the HTML to React component to render HTML, these processors will be taken into account, will be executed, and the HTML parse will return not only the proper HTML, but also the proper React components if we have defined a processor for specific parts.
Awesome. That doesn't look too complicated. That looks straightforward. So it's something that can be used with any returned HTML. So we could have, with the example I used where we get a form back, an output from contact form 7, we could then parse it and render it differently.
Exactly.
In React. And although you used the example of Gutenberg, this could also work with any theme builder like Elementor or the Divi theme.
Exactly. This is a very useful tool exactly for that, for dealing with these builders in WordPress like Elementor and some other ones. This is a very good tool to deal with that, because you can detect specific blocks created with this tool, and then you can return your custom React components.
So how easy is it to actually detect the elements in a page? I mean, you used a simple example of just finding an image tag, but can you go really deep? I mean, can you get right into complex regular expressions to, or is it always this straightforward? Just look for a block quote there, or just look for an image, or can you get into complex regular expressions to parse the incoming HTML?
I think that you can use, I mean, the way you have to detect the element is the test function.
Yeah. This is where, if you got into that deeply, this is where you would put possibly regular expressions in parsing the HTML to try and...
The test function will receive each node detected in the HTML. So for each node, you can apply all the logic you may want.
I see. So it's already doing some pre-processing by separating the HTML out into nodes, and then you just need to pick up the node by class name or by tag or... Okay, that makes it much easier, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes, and from that node, you can evaluate the type of node and the attributes of the node. So yeah, that with that information, you can apply regular expressions, or maybe I want all the elements with a class that starts with this thing or that ends with this other thing.
Then you would start getting into regular expressions, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Or for example, here you can apply some logic to return the same node you are detecting, or return a different one based on some condition that may be inside of the node detected. For example, I want to return a specific React component only when the content contains a specific text. I mean, I guess that you have a lot of elements here to go very deep in the definition of when you want to return a React component and from which elements you want to activate this processor.
And for detecting different parts of the node or different nodes, you've also got all the built-in JavaScript string functions, you know, like contains, for instance.
Yes, exactly. This is a JavaScript function where you can apply all the
any
logic.
JavaScript. So
exactly. And let me show you, just to end this explanation about processors. In the Frontity profile in GitHub, there is a repository that contains the Frontity project that we are using to create this web page. I mean, this is a Frontity project, as you can see here, generator Frontity. And this is a very good example of what can be achieved with Frontity, because this is a complex project. So if you have a look in the Frontity org theme, you will see that there is a folder called processors are here. As you can see, there are a lot of processors created to deal with different elements. So you can customize like almost any element. For example, you can check those who with a class name that contains drop-down item. It should be a type element with class name, and the class name should contain this.
Yeah,
so for this element,
sorry.
No, tell me.
Yeah, it's probably worth mentioning that for the Frontity website, in the back end, all the content is done with Gutenberg.
Yes. And specifically to deal with Gutenberg properly, you may need some processors to return like custom elements for different blocks created with Gutenberg.
Mm.
But yeah, this is an example of a complex project that deals with Gutenberg content, and this is the result of what you can create with Frontity.
Amazing. And that repo is publicly available, so if people want to see how it's been done to work with their own Gutenberg content, they can just look there.
Yes.
So we'll share this link as well below, yes?
Yes, we will put it in the
And you've got a
description.
repo as well to share that we can put the link.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
In the description of the video, I will add a link to this demo, and also these demos we are sharing are self-explanatory. They both contains a README MD with the proper explanations of what the demo contains and where you can check the part of the code relevant to the demo and so on.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys out there want to look at these, yeah, do give us feedback on them so we can improve, iterate them and improve them.
Yes.
For future talks.
Yep. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. That was super interesting.
Yes.
That's not something I've got into, actually, the processes. So I found that really, really interesting. So thank you.
Yeah, little by little, we are getting deeper in the different features. So
absolutely.
So yeah.
Kind of learning along with the community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why these Frontity talks, I think it's a good exercise of sharing this knowledge with the community and between us at the same time.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
Hope everyone out there found these topics interesting as well.
Yes. Okay, I think that, yeah, you are finding this interesting. Don't hesitate to provide feedback in the comments of the video and maybe suggest some new topics.
Yep, and we tend to pick topics from the community forum, questions that come up in the community forum. So both of today's topics have come from there. So if you have any questions about Frontity, post in the community forum, and maybe we'll turn that into one of our Frontity talk sessions at some point in the future.
Exactly. Exactly.
In any case, we're always there in the community forum to help and answer your questions. So put your questions there.
Okay, so I think that we can finish the video.
Yeah, time to wrap things up.
Yeah, hope you guys are doing well there.
Yeah.
And see you in the next video.
See you next time, guys.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.